All right, what's up guys? Today I'm going to be giving you my first impressions on the brand new Rhombus Quanta, which kind of just came out of nowhere. I mean, Rhombus literally just released the refoam for $200 maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago at this point. So to come out with a full foam core for $120, $100 after a discount code, is kind of a pretty crazy move. And after playing with this for 2 sessions now, it makes Rhombus's lineup really confusing. So obviously everyone's very familiar with how the Ripple story played out. It was a very powerful paddle. They were very heavy. They had some drawbacks. They didn't feel like the original Ripple. Then the refoam was kind of supposed to be this all-court paddle, which was fine, but maybe a little expensive for what it was. And then this comes out, and these are like everything the Ripple wanted to be, and for $100. So to me, this just kind of clears out Rhombus's entire lineup, and there's no reason to recommend another one of their paddles except for the Quanta. To me, it's like a better version of all the paddles they have if you're looking for a power paddle. Right now, this paddle is not officially launched, but it will be up for pre-order on September 5th, and then the official release date is September 12th. As always, if you want the specs, those will all be on screen now. There are 5 paddles, so it's gonna be a lot of paddles to put on screen, but if I just walk through them really quickly, the R1 is an elongated paddle with an arrow curve head, basically similar to the Yola Hyperion. Then you have the R2, which is this one right here. This is a standard or wide body paddle, very similar to a Yola Pro 4 Scorpius shape. Then you have the R3, which is basically a Yola Perseus, so it's another elongated paddle, but with a square head instead of the arrow curve head. Then you have the R4, which is their hybrid shape, and then you have the R5, which is another wide body shape, but just with a slightly longer handle than what's on the R2. So if you're someone where you're a little bit more sensitive to two-handed backhands and you wanted a wide body, you'd probably be looking at the R5. Otherwise, most people probably fine with just the R2. So right away with the Quanta line, you have a lot of options for shapes. Basically, they've got everything you could possibly want and then probably a little bit more. And at $100, that's very appealing. The only other brand that does this many options is Vatic Pro, and they do something very similar to kind of how Ronbus is doing it, but they tend to just vary the handle lengths on some of their different shapes. So now let's talk about the performance of these. Out of the box, if you saw the specs on screen, the swing weights are the polar opposite of what the Ripple was. The Ripples were very heavy. You'd have the R1 at like a 126 to 128 swing weight. Even the R2 was hovering around like 118 swing weight, maybe 116. And every single one of these units was below 111. The heaviest one for swing weight was the R3 and elongated with a square top at 111. That is very low. And then you go all the way down to the R2, and our unit was 102 swing weight, which for anyone out there, whether you're a junior, someone with weak arms, whoever you are, I promise you 102 is very light. It would be easy for just about anyone to swing. So if you're looking for a paddle that is very low swing weight, the Quanta is going to do that very well. Now, the downside to this is out of the box, the ball does tend to push them around quite a bit. And so my recommendation with these is going to be that you put weight on them. Just like the Franklin C45, they come light so that you can customize them. And they're fine if you want to use them stock, though I would say the stability of the paddles is very low. If you looked at all the twist weights, they're all very low numbers, as you'd expect, given a low static weight and a low swing weight. So just know that if you're hitting a block or a reset, you're probably gonna feel some twisting in your hand. It's not gonna be the greatest, and that is one of the reasons I'm gonna recommend that you weight these up. I would also say out of the box, these paddles feel a little bit stiffer. They're not very plush. It doesn't feel like the ball sits on the face very long. Nothing really bad about it, but it just doesn't really stand out. But as soon as you put weight on these paddles, that's when everything unlocks. If I take my R2 right here, I put 15 grams of weight on this just to try the same weight setup that was on the boomstick. I was like, let's just see what happens if you put that on the Quanta. And let me tell you, that definitely unlocks the potential of this paddle. First, as soon as you do that, the sound of the paddle changes. It gets a deeper, thuddy sound. In fact, it starts to sound a lot like the boomstick. We even did a test where we blindfolded ourselves and bounced both of them. We had someone bounce a ball on both, and then you had to guess which one it was, and it was very hard to tell. In fact, I would say it was flipping a coin to figure out which one was actually the boomstick and which one wasn't. Now, without the weight, it was a lot easier to tell which is which. Now, the next thing is, obviously, as you'd expect with 15 grams, just like the boomstick, the sweet spot, way better. The very first session I played with any of the Quantas, I slapped the weight on it because I was playing some more serious games and I didn't really want to think about the paddle. And there was not a single time where I complained about the sweet spot or thought, this isn't stable enough, or the ball just kind of died. Like, zero complaints. So just know that if you want to get to that level of performance, be prepared to add some weight. And the 15 grams that I added, that's 7.5 on each side, not 15 grams on each side. That would be kind of crazy. But once you have that weight on there, not only does the stability go way up, but the power and pop feel way better. Like, it starts to enter the realm of very good power paddles. Right now, it's a little too early for me to say how comparable I think it is to a boomstick, but even if it's a 10 to 15% difference, if that, the real question I think everyone is going to be asking themselves, is that 10 to 15% difference worth an extra $233? You could buy 3 Ronbus Quantas for the price of a boomstick. And so if the paddle is even remotely comparable, would you rather have 1 boomstick or would you rather have 3 Quantas? Now, of course, it's gonna vary from person to person, and I do think that the boomstick still does feel a little bit different, and I'd probably place the pop above the Quanta at the moment. But again, for most of you watching this, the level of performance that you can get from the Quanta at the price that it is really impressive. Now, one thing I do want to call out is that they are using harder pallets now, so it's not that squishy foam that the Ripples had, which was far too squishy in my opinion. But the only thing that has changed that might be a drawback for some of you is the grip size is bigger now. So these are about 4 1/4 versus the 4 1/8 that they were before. So do just know that if you really liked the grip size before, they are thicker now, and it does seem to be because of those harder pallets. Now, if you want to see the design of the core, we'll have an X-ray on screen. As you can see, it's a EPP center core, and then it has an EVA foam ring. And then around the bottom corners, you'll see these thicker inserts that are in there. Ronbus is saying that this is a different density foam and has some vibration dampening effects. Honestly, I don't know that much about this foam, but what I can tell you so far is that the paddle does play well. All right, now one of the last things I'll leave you guys with before we wrap this video up is just a quick comparison to the Ripple. So we took the Ripple out and we hit it side by side with the Quanta. And at this point, I cannot think of a single reason that I would recommend the Ripple over the Quanta. To me, the Quanta is everything the Ripple wanted to be. When you pick up the Ripple and you hit them side by side, the sound doesn't sound as good, the feel off the face isn't as nice, and with how much heavier it is, I just felt like I had to work so much harder at the net. Whereas with these, they're light out of the box, and even after adding 15 grams to this, it still feels a lot easier to swing than the Ripple. So to me, the pop comes a lot easier from the Quantas than it does the Ripple, and the way the feedback feels when you hit the ball is a lot nicer. The only thing I'd say about the Ripple is that it probably drives the ball harder, but you have to think about the swing weight difference. We're comparing some of these Quantas that are unweighted at a 107 swing weight to a R1 Ripple, which is 126 swing weight. If you added the same amount of weight to make one of these Quantas match that Ripple, it's probably gonna drive the ball just as hard as the Ripple. So to me, it's kind of interesting that they just completely cannibalized the Ripple that only came out 3 months ago, and I kind of feel bad for anyone that bought one of those and now the Quanta exists. But my guess is with how the launch of that paddle went, they realized they needed to pivot. So yeah, so far I would say very strong early impressions of the Quanta. We'll need some more time to give you guys some side-by-side comparisons of paddles like the J2NF, the upcoming Bread and Butter Loco, and the Boomstick. But right now, for $100, this is a very, very good paddle, and I'm very excited to play with it some more. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.